we hear you now. It just, we didn't have it at the beginning.
Okay. Okay, man, we'll hear you.
Now we hear you fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I'm having a little trouble getting the PowerPoint to move.
Okay. All right.
So I'll go ahead and go through it, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up. The Louisville Fire, I've got a informational packet here with our PowerPoint, basically our organizational chart, our recommended budget for this year, $72,346,000. An overview of our department. We currently have 425 personnel, 399 of those are uniformed, and we do have 43 new recruits that started in recruit class last Monday. They'll be in class for 26 weeks, graduating in November. We have 366 emergency medical technicians and 13 paramedics in the department, and all of our uniformed personnel are hazardous materials technicians. Our largest bureau is the Suppression Bureau. We operate out of 21 fire stations and 26 fire companies, which is an apparatus with a crew of 4. We're divided into 4 districts or battalions. All of our suppression personnel work a 24-hour shift, followed by 48 hours off duty. We are considered all hazards response. We responded to any type of rescue, water rescues, and a lot of special hazmat and other types of incidents. We do have special response vehicles that support our operation, including the fuel truck, air bottle truck, several rescue trucks, and utility vehicles for areas that we don't have access to with our normal vehicles. This is our incidents for 2019-20. Stayed pretty close to the same from year to year. We did have a slight increase in the number of structure fires. About 57% of our incidents are emergency medical and 43% are fire incidents. Our department is accredited through the Commission on Fire Accreditation International. We were accredited in 2014, and we went back and were re-accredited in 2019. There are only 289 fire departments in the country that are accredited. And that's out of about 35,000 fire departments. We're also an ISO Class 1. There are only 411 Class 1 fire departments in the country, and there's only 104 departments that are both a Class 1 ISO and fully accredited. As I mentioned, we do emergency medical response. Our first responders do triage, treatment, and stabilizing. We do not do transport. All of our fire units are equipped with defibrillators and medical equipment. Our Fire Suppression Bureau, as I mentioned, is our largest bureau. To a typical structure fire, we send 4 pumping units and 2 ladder trucks and a battalion chief. And if it is an actual fire, we have a safety chief, and we have an assistant chief that's a 24-hour operations chief. Anytime we go to beyond that first alarm response, we add another battalion chief. And we always make sure we set up a rapid intervention team in case there becomes a firefighter becomes entrapped on an incident. We recently received a $600,000 assistance to firefighters grant that we use to replace our accountability system. If you see the TPAS 5, that's a device a firefighter wears on their fire coat. It has the ability for them to push the front button if they're in trouble, and if they're motionless for more than 30 seconds or 60 seconds, it will go into alarm and notify the command post. It also gives us the ability at the command post to evacuate firefighters out of a building that's deteriorating. we could do that with a push of a button to be able to evacuate them. The other thing that we've worked on is we've had drones for several years. We're in the process of updating our drone systems that we have that include thermal imaging cameras on them. As well, our watercraft, we have a new fireboat that's on order that should be delivered by the end of this year or the spring of next year, depending on the ability to get parts and to construct that. So that's in the works. Our main administration and support services are at headquarters, 1135 West Jefferson. We do arson investigations metro-wide. About a third of those are in the suburban, 2/3 are in the urban area. We have our own automotive service facility. We do all the service on all of our 160 vehicles, as well as the Metro EMS ambulance fleet at the automotive shop. We have a fire prevention and public education bureau that works out of headquarters, and they're the ones that do all the required inspections, as well as doing a lot of our education programs in the schools and in businesses. The fire academy, where the recruits are training right now, is at 1501 West Hill Street. That's a picture of the fire environment tower. The difference with this class that we have right now, it has 43 Louisville fire recruits, 4 fire recruits from Shively, and for the first time ever, it has 14 fire recruits from Pleasure Ridge Park. So we're doing a combined class. It's a large class. They've been split, and half of them go to our facility, and half of them go to PRP's facility, and then we switch them every 2 weeks. That's a first for that. We also do public education, recently replacing our old child safety trailer with an inflatable house. And our members, even though this past year with COVID, we haven't been able to be as active, we do home safety checks where we install smoke detectors in people's homes that are owner occupied. One last thing I'd like to include that's not in this is to compliment the men and women of the Division of Fire. I know this past year has been difficult for everybody with the pandemic and the civil unrest that we've had. It's presented some unique challenges. So I want to take a minute to commend the men and women of the Division of Fire. They work hard every day to make us successful, and commend their dedication to the safety of this community. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. This may be a question for Daniel and for you, but I just want to get to the overall sort of top line number increase here. So when you look at the percent increase in departments, particularly for departments that aren't making any significant changes in operations that I know of, this is one of the larger percent increases. It's a 12.4% increase. Now, as I pointed out in the previous hearing, some of this is pension costs, but 3.6 million of it is actually pension costs, but a lot more is elsewhere in the budget, and particularly a big increase in non-scheduled overtime, $2.6 million increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. So my question is, first of all, why the increase in non-scheduled overtime, and why are we seeing this kind of overall increase in the police department, the fire department budget, given no significant change in services rendered that I can see?
Well, I think the majority of it is personnel costs for us. I do know the pension cost is quite a bit. I'm showing that our total in personnel is about 7.6 million. CDRS being 3.5 million of that. Non-scheduled overtime, as you said, is 2.6. And some of it is the fact that we've got about 65 vacancies The majority of those in our fire suppression forces, which work 24/48. So even though we've hired 43 new recruits, while they're going through 6 months of training, they're not available to work in slots on the street. So the some of that cost is to offset having to maintain the staffing, the daily staffing that we have to have on a daily basis, and I believe that's the difference in the unscheduled overtime is because of that. We just don't have as many bodies to fill those daily staffing positions. Typically, we staff at about a 3.6 staffing factor, meaning if for every one firefighter position, we have 3.6 people because of the vacations and the shift that they work and sick leave and things of that nature. So, I believe that's what's attributing to the increase in the unscheduled overtime.
So, Chief, you may want to have somebody unshare your screen so we could see you instead of the screen.
I'm trying to get that off of there. I'm having issues.
That's all right. So let me follow up.
I was just going to add everything that Chief said is absolutely correct, but I would also add that this is one of the times that COVID has actually increased our expenses kind of indirectly because they could not get the recruit classes recruited and through timely due to COVID, which in turn drove some of this overtime. And effectively, you never make that time up because it takes 6 months to train a recruit class. This upcoming year, we have 2 recruit classes, the one that Chief just mentioned, and then we have one budgeted for the second part of the year to try to catch up a little bit. But basically, with the staffing structure flat, you end up staffing on overtime.
So, Daniel, I think you answered my question, which was going to be, why are we short? I understand that the non-scheduled overtime is higher because we're short, and you're saying that's COVID related. Is it also, are we finding fewer applicants? Is it harder to fill classes now than it was at one time?
Well, we had some delays because of COVID. When we start our process, from the time we take applications, they take a written test, they take the physical test, they have to have practice time. Then we do interviews, medicals, and polygraphs, and that takes about a year to actually complete that process to start a class. And some of what happened because of COVID, we weren't able to do the physical testing. We used to take groups of people down at the academy and run them through the course. We weren't able to do that. We had to because of distancing and cleaning everything, so we could only run a few through at a time. That really added probably a 3 or 4 month delay into that process. We did end up with about 119 candidates that made it through the whole process. We interviewed all 119 to get this class. We actually had 45. We had a couple of people that had some health issues right before the class started that weren't able to participate. So that's a lot. We also, as Daniel mentioned, we had some expenses due to COVID. We had about 400 different times when our people were exposed, and because of the fact that we had to quarantine for 14 days, and then because they were working with somebody else in the fire station, we had to quarantine that whole group. So with that, we had problems last year. We had to hire back about 1,000 shifts because people were quarantined.
So let me just follow up on that real quickly. You said we really don't catch up. Will we catch up next year? Will we be looking at this kind of non-scheduled overtime year after year? Or what do you anticipate there?
I believe this class will graduate in November. Our plan is to immediately following that to start a class in the spring, and that class should get us caught up, depending on how many retirements we get in June and July of this calendar year. Last year we had 16 members that retired, 8 members that resigned for one reason or another.
Chief, we've lost your signal somehow. Chief, you may need to sign back on and off or something in order to get your signal back. All right, committee, we'll be in recess here for a minute while we see what we can do here.
Chairman, I just texted him to let him know. I mean, I think he knows, but I just let him know that he's off air.
Okay. Well, while he is off air, and as you know, we have a hard stop at 4:55. So while Chief Frederick is trying to get back on, I do see Daniel Frocht on here. So I just want to point out this is Daniel's last budget hearing. And I have told him that we may not have a whole lot of opportunity to pass along accolades. We've done that throughout this process. But I will just say, Daniel, we've enjoyed working with you. We've enjoyed hearing from you, and we're going to miss you. And I know that's a feeling throughout Metro government. So you indicated you might like to say something about your staff, and you can do it now while we wait for the chief to come back on.
I think Chief might be back, and I would love to say something, but I don't want to interrupt the proceedings, so I'll wait, or however you'd like to proceed.
Well, if he's back, that's fine. I don't see him, but Chief, are you back on?
They have to make me a participant.
I see him in the grid.
Okay, I'll probably see the other. Chief, you could go ahead. If you're
Okay,
on,
can you
go
hear me?
ahead where you were.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I had to switch computers.
Okay, we can hear you.
Technology got me.
So I think you were talking about your recruit classes.
Yes, sir. I believe the next class will get us caught up. Like I said, we anticipate we'll probably have 20 retirements going into this fiscal year. And so with another class coming next spring, I believe that'll get us back where we need to be.
Oh, I have one more question, and then I'll get out of the queue. We heard from emergency services a few minutes ago that there's been real progress on, I guess, what's being called +1 response, which is in certain critical incidents, at least, we would be sending the closest unit, whether it's a suburban fire unit or a Louisville fire unit. This is something that you and I actually talked about this at a fire scene recently.
Sure.
I think it's a real win for the community. And my question is, first of all, I congratulate you if we're moving toward that. And my question is, when do you think this will all be buttoned down and really can be explained and rolled out to the community?
Well, it's been a long process working through everything that we needed to address. And there are still some things that we're working on. We hadn't made an agreement with the union, so it doesn't violate their contract. I drafted an agreement, work with the county chiefs to work through that and make sure that we were all in unison as far as what we wanted to do with the cross-boundary response. From that, we actually have a working group. Some of my staff, some of the county suburban fire staff, they've been working on common policies. They've started having meetings between the neighboring departments as far as the stations, getting out and visiting with each other and going to start doing some training together. So there's, some things are moving. There's still some issues that we're trying to work out with as far as we have a common policy. How are we going to do things as far as incident command, as far as accountability? A lot of our language is similar. We just have differences in numbering systems and things of that nature. But we're fairly close, and what we've done is taken the map that we developed. We have actually gone out, and I say we, but it's a group of my staff as well as the county fire staff, have gone and met with each department so they can adjust their boundaries as to what they're comfortable making. So that process for the most part has been completed, and so now that has moved to MetroSafe's arena to take those buffer zone maps and configure them somehow in the CAD or however we're going to make this work. So there's still some challenges. While I would like to say in the next month or so, being optimistic, I think we're probably still a little bit away from that. So I don't want to get overzealous about it.
Well, we appreciate your work. We appreciate your working on this.
Mutual aid. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we appreciate your working on this. It's
okay, not a problem. Not a problem at all, sir.
As I said at the last hearing, there were two pretty well publicized, pretty serious fires in District 9 on the St. Matthews Louisville fire border, and I think what you're talking about is a real win for the community. Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Chairman Hollander. Appreciate you being here, Chief, and good to see you. So, some comment areas, and Chairman Hollander sort of beat me to the punch on the question of the budget. But just to clarify one thing with that, what would we expect to see? Let's assume we're able to fill the classes. Well, we have one already in, and let's assume we have a relatively reasonable class, that meets expectations as far as numbers. And then we have the retirements that are what you assume they will be. They're not more than that, let's say. Are we saying here that next year we should see, there'll be pension increases, regular pay increases, the regular personnel cost increases, but we will see a significant reduction in the overtime costs going into next year?
Ideally, if we do have all the positions filled, I believe we'll probably see a little bit less than what, like as you said, even with another class coming in behind this one, depending on what our vacancies are, we may still have some unscheduled overtime. So okay. I think the previous 2 years we were at about 1.2 million. So this is a pretty significant increase for us.
Yeah, look, what we have here,
I would just say it's ranged $1 million to $1.5 million if we're fully staffed, going back about 5 years. But it depends on contract will move it up a little bit. But that's been the general range if we have not had hiccups in classes.
Okay, that's helpful because I'm still not wholly convinced what this shift of $9 million is. I'm talking total budget. Oh, no, excuse me. Am I getting that right? 7 million? But anyway, 66 million from the revised budget to 72 million. So let's call it 6 million. I know a couple million is pension, a couple million is overtime, but this is an unsustainable increase when we have, I'm looking at in 2016, 489 average filled positions. We're down to 425. So to your point, Chief, right, we're understaffed currently. There's no question about it. But we're down staff almost 20%. But in that same time period, the budget is increased over 20%. So a 40% swing in overall personnel cost ratio to the budget in 6 years. So I think overtime is one opportunity, but let me clarify something on the overtime. If the overtime is due to delaying a class which was due to COVID, then how come we can't use COVID dollars to cover that? CARES Act money, for example.
Well,
Well, I would say in some manners we have charged COVID, because you'll see in FY20, you'll see a salary transfer, both and a fringe transfer that are total a little more than $5 million. We also will have transfers in this year reflected in the year-to-date totals. So we are claiming some of the public safety costs. We're claiming it at about a 35% clip, because the remainder of the CARES funding that we've had appropriated have really gone more towards eviction prevention, small business assistance, and then the direct public health response. But to answer your question, we have claimed it, and you see those as credits.
Okay. And so then, Chief, I'm very happy about the news moving forward with this agreement between the suburban and Louisville fire departments. That's tremendous. What I would ask, maybe as a request, is, and look, let me be clear. I was in the armed forces. I was a Marine. The Marines and the Navy, for example, the Marines and the Army love to jab each other and make fun of each other. And, but at the end of the day, when I was in an Army area of operations overseas, all that, chiding and jabbing each other and what I'll call friendly competitiveness washed away. And we were very much on the same team. I've seen posts, for example, when you were recruiting for this recent recruit class from Louisville firefighters, essentially, I wouldn't call it friendly competition. I would call it making fun of suburban firefighters and calling them the JV team and all this kind of thing. I would hope that we shed some of that, what seems like unprofessionalism. And yeah, they're two different departments and all, but all there to sacrifice their lives. I had a neighbor's house quite literally across the street from me, burn in the middle of the night with a baby, and a mother and father and a baby in there. And, we had one of the suburban fire departments, Milltown Anchorage department, came out, did just a tremendous professional job in going into the fire and risking their lives to save these families, which your firefighters do every day. And I just want to make sure that, hey, look, we want to have some friendly competition privately, have at it, but when it spills into the public sphere and doesn't look friendly anymore, I think that could break down this cooperation we're trying to create. So I would just ask as much as possible to try to, and suburban fire departments need to do that too. Make sure that, look, privately we can have a lot of fun with each other, but particularly publicly, let's project that we're all on the same team. And then final comment, with that said, unlike most of the departments that we've been reviewing recently, I don't know what your secret sauce is, but your retention numbers compared to most other departments, we just talked about EMS, emergency services, their numbers are like double what the typical metro turnover is. We've been talking a lot about LMPD and them hemorrhaging officers, whereas you guys are like at half the metro turnover rate. So kudos to you and your department for what you guys are doing to retain your firefighters. And I would encourage every department, when we have best practices in departments that are doing well, everybody else needs to look at it. And I would encourage EMS, LMPD, and whomever else to take a look at this and find out what's going well here, because clearly something's working. So congratulations on that.
Appreciate that.
Chief, if Councilwoman Armstrong is next, I have heard from a couple of members that they're having trouble hearing you. I know you're on a new device. I know we've thrown you off a couple of times. If there's any way to either increase the volume or speak up, that sounds a little bit better.
Okay.
Better, a little better. Councilwoman Armstrong?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for being here. I want to ask you some questions about the Quint companies. There's one in my district at Louisville. It used to be it had a truck company and an engine company, 8 firefighters combined in 2019 into a Quint company with 4 firefighters. And then just a few days later, there was a fatal fire in my district where somebody unfortunately lost his life. And so my understanding about how these Quint companies work, and my understanding is that there are several throughout the city, is that whenever they arrive on scene, firefighters have to make a decision to operate either as a truck company or an engine company, and it can create certain issues. And my question is, I had been hopeful, based on my conversations, it sounds like there are concerns around Quint companies perhaps not being able to provide as robust a services as the firefighters wish that they could because of staffing decisions and because there just aren't as many people responding. And that there might be opportunities to staff those Quint companies. I learned that the name Quint comes from the 5 different functions they have to provide when they get on the scene. So 4 people providing 5 functions seems like a lot. And that if we could add 2 people to those Quint companies to staff them with 6 people, that they would be able to provide more services, act more quickly whenever they arrive at the scene of a fire. And so based on my read of the budget, it doesn't look like there are those extra personnel on the Quint companies. And so I'm wondering, one, if you can confirm if I'm right about that. 2, sort of just tell me, is my assessment of sort of Quint companies and how extra staffing could help them provide a more robust response accurate? And maybe help me explain why, I know we have new recruit classes. Are there plans to more fully staff those Quint companies? And if not, why not?
Well, I guess looking at the original Quint concept from back in the 90s, was always a way to consolidate 2 units into one to reduce staffing and save costs. And the actual change at Louisville was basically a budget cut. It was either that or close another station. So I made a decision to go with a reduction there that would still, maintain both stations active. The actual Quint concept stands for quintuple pumper, and it means the different things the truck's equipped with: water, a pump, tank water, hose, regular portable ladders, and an aerial ladder. There are typically Quint staffed nationally with anywhere from 3 to 6. And to answer your question, if we have the availability and additional staffing, the Quint companies are the first ones that we build up in our build-up procedure. So every day we look at our staffing. Minimum staffing for the whole department per shift is 111 people. So if today we have 114 because there's not as many off on vacation or sick, the extra 3 bodies go on the 3 Quints. Now to do that permanently, that changes our budget numbers. That would have to be something that we have to have approved to do. The one thing about the Quint companies is even though they have the ability to be multi-function, when we dispatch them, they are also sent with the same number of other units. In other words, if they're sent on a structure fire, they go as a ladder truck. So they still get 4 additional pumping units and 1 additional ladder truck that's going with them. Overall, the whole fire protection is a system. Anytime you change anything in that system, whether it's taking away personnel or adding personnel, it has an impact to the whole system. So, to answer your question, Quint staffing, hopefully when we get our numbers staffed back up, better when this class graduates, we'll be able to.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chief. The firefighters do an amazing job of responding, and I just want to make sure that we're setting them up for success. I know that those cuts, particularly to the Rubel station, were pretty severe. And, we've basically cut the person power by half. And so, again, 4 people expected to do 5 functions is a lot. And so my hope would be that as we get these new recruit classes in, that we could look at increasing the staffing on those quints, still saving 2 positions at each station, but get that staffing up to 6 people on a permanent basis. But again, the firefighters do an amazing job, and so thank you to all of the firefighters for the hard work and putting themselves on the line every single day. Thank you.
Councilwoman George.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief. Council Member Armstrong actually stole my thunder there with the question with the quint, but while I'm here and have the ear, there was kind of a lingering question I had. If a quint were fully scaled up, what is the anticipated time savings in terms of them being able to respond quicker? Like, how much quicker could they respond if they were functioning as both an engine and a truck?
Well, it doesn't really affect their response time. It's still the same vehicle, the same travel time to get to the incident. What it affects is if you have 4 members on the quint, they can perform rescue and certain functions. If you have additional personnel, whether it's 5 or 6, being 1 more or 2 more bodies, certainly they can do more on a scene but the same holds true for any of our companies. That's the whole key is, our stations are deployed and distributed so that we can get 4-minute response time to any type of incident within our district. But we have a thing called an effective response force, which means we need to have 17 to 25 members on scene to attack a structure fire, for instance. So that effective response force is a time that we track, to get how long does it take us to get those additional bodies there. If there's a rescue, a first arriving unit can go in immediately and try to effect a rescue the best they can. Once we get additional units there, we set up other things, ventilating the building, laddering the building, some of those other functions that happen, and the time stamp for that effective response force is 8 to 10 minutes. So we fall pretty well within national standard on that. It's one of the things that we are required in our accreditation to track. So we do monitor that. The issue, I guess, overall is, we try to do the best with the budget that we have and the personnel that we have. Our people are very well equipped. We have pretty good as far as our fleet and our equipment and all those things. They're very highly motivated and highly trained and do the best we can with.
Yes, I have no doubt. I think really the lingering question from a lay perspective is really, if my understanding of a fire is that seconds really matter, right? It doubles. I don't know what the rate of seconds is, but it doubles quickly in a very short period of time. And so if you have a quint that can respond and be first on the scene, it seems like if they are able to perform all these functions, you're going to save some in the way of efficiency and be able to respond quicker. Am I not thinking right?
Any of our units that arrive on scene can initiate rescue or attacking a fire. Those initial functions, they can do those. Any of the 21 pumping units. The 5 ladder trucks don't carry any water. The quints do carry water. So any of the 21 units that carry water can initiate some type of fire attack, some type of rescue. So the travel time, whether it's an engine getting there first, a pumper, or whether it's a quint Both of those units have the ability to start a fire attack. Where the personnel come into play is the additional functions that are needed.
Okay.
I'm hoping I'm explaining this.
I think you are. I think it still leaves me with, if a Quinn is first to respond, if it's not fully staffed to 5 or 6, then it can only perform certain functions, and then it's relying on that truck to get there, correct?
Well, it's typically, they can perform the function of either a pumper or a truck, either or. Typically, they can't do both because they're not staffed up. And I think that's what you're getting at is, they're even though they're a Quint unit and they're multifunctional, they can't perform multiple roles. I think that's what you're.
That is what I'm getting to, which then gets to if seconds matter in a fire, are we also enhancing, safety? And I understand what you're saying, which is you guys are already performing at a level that is within standards. Just to say that if we were looking to make an enhancement, this seems like a good opportunity because there is an efficiency there which would save if fully scaled up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not see anyone else in the queue. If anybody wants or has another question, please jump in here. I do want to just thank you, Chief, and thanks to the department. I mentioned that you and I saw each other at a fire on Grinstead Drive not long ago. And I've just heard some remarkable things from neighbors who saw the helicopter video from WLKY of that fire. It's just when you sometimes you don't realize that a building can be fully engulfed and you've got people climbing around on the roof trying to cut it off to save a big part of that apartment building. And I know that's what you do. But it's important work and remarkable work, and we appreciate it very much. I do want to say before the hearing ends, we started here a little bit when we lost Chief Frederick's signal, but this is the last budget hearing for Daniel Frock. And as I said, we're all going to miss Daniel. We've enjoyed working with him, not just in budget hearings, obviously, but in all of the processes of dealing with the budget. And Daniel, if there's anything you'd like to say, you have the floor for one last time.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to extend a thank. I'm filled with gratitude as I'm leaving the city, so I wanted to extend a thank you to the council, to the members of the public who come and speak on public policy and the issues. It's good. I think the government's strengthened when our residents are engaged with us, so I'm very appreciative. And then in particular, just wanted to thank both the Abramson and Fisher administrations for the opportunities I've been given and the chances to learn and lead and work through problems. It's been just a great experience, and extend a huge thank you to all of the hardworking people at OMB. Aaron and Monica are on this call, but people work hard every day to try to get things right, to manage the public priorities and the public purse strongly and confidently, and with the diligence that the public deserves. So just a huge thank you to everybody for the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Best of luck to you at our losses. Bellerman's gain. Thank you very much. I don't see anyone else in the queue. Without objection, we will be adjourned in just a minute. I do want to tell council members we will be leaving this for another WebEx meeting. So you'll need to sign off here, sign back on to the public hearing WebEx meeting, and we will start promptly at 5 o'clock. We have, I think, 54, maybe 53 people signed up for that. I would estimate that public hearing will last for close to 3 hours, so we probably will be going straight from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m. Without objection, we're adjourned, and thank you. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Daniel, and your teams.